And a good evening, everybody. We are getting some people in here and we're going to take a few minutes. I actually have two things that have come up. I have to dispatch a team for our call out team very quickly. So I'm going to go handle that business. And while we're waiting, we'll wait for more people to kick in, and then we'll talk about tonight's subject, which is map your neighborhood. It's good to see everyone who's here tonight, and stand by for a moment. I will be back momentarily. Again, that will give folks a chance to get in and get set. Stand by.
Well, I might as well get started by saying hello to everybody who's here. I'm Valerie Fontaine from the Westside Village Homeowners Association Board, and I wanted to thank everybody who has been joining us tonight and for all of our other classes of neighborhood team program. And we have one more after this one, which will be the second Monday of September, because the first Monday is Labor Day weekend. And it'll be the last one of this series, and it'll be about situational awareness and security after a disaster. And I've heard this program before, and it's quite eye-opening because you don't really think about security issues, and as security being part of preparedness, being ready for all of those who in our neighborhood did not prepare and become desperate, and sort of how to take care of ourselves and take care of our neighborhood in the event of, people going a little crazy after a disaster. There are things we need to think about other than making sure we have food and water and know how to put out fires, which are the things we've been talking about pretty much up till now, and medical issues. But there's a whole other aspect to a disaster, which is sort of the social and psychological part of dealing with a disaster. And one of the things I'm thinking about doing, not as part of this series, but as a follow-up, is to get someone to come and speak to us about how to prepare ourselves and how to deal with others who react to a disaster in a variety of different ways. For those of you who have gone through the whole CERT course, at the very end, they do talk a little bit about disaster psychology. And, even though I might have food and water, the whole idea of a disaster still scares me. And I'm sure it's going to scare everybody. And we need to know how to best handle ourselves and our feelings so we can help other people. And we also need to be able to know how to deal with their feelings. And it's best to be prepared ahead of time And so we've thought these things through. So we know how to handle these situations when they arise. And we're not just talking about earthquakes here, because as you know, there's all different kinds of disasters. I mean, we had sort of a taste with just what happened with the lockdown during the pandemic, how people react to that. And, people who were more prepared had food in their house, probably had toilet paper in their house, and didn't have to worry as much. So, there's a lot to preparing, and it's not just having stuff, it's taking care of ourselves, knowing how to take care of ourselves. So, Chin, are you ready to get going?
Oh, I was actually going to sign out and say, you got this. So peace out. See you later. I'm out. No,
No,
I am
no,
back.
no, no.
And
Okay.
Valerie, you're a great opening act right there. It's like if I were a rock star, I'd be worried that you're going to take my record contract.
No, nope. This is all for you, Chin.
All right. Well, right at 7 o'clock, when we got started here, I got a call from the captain. We have a structure fire out in the valley that I had to dispatch for. So thank everybody, and it gave some folks time to get in. This is great. So we're going to get started. Tonight's subject is map your neighborhood, and normally we would have an expert on the subject. We would have had Jason McMillan. But he is not able to join us tonight. He is actually moving between the Pacific Northwest and the East Coast. So again, it's a good night, everybody. I'm kidding. What we're going to do is I will actually instruct on the Map Your Neighborhood program. And Map Your Neighborhood is one of the first programs that our former Battalion 18 coordinator, Larry Bogatz, ran me through when I first came on to the group. I took the training program, and as many of you know, since that time, I've been very closely working with our LAFD people, and here in South Bureau, we've always had the understanding that when our LAFD folks would do Ryland, the Ready Your Los Angeles neighborhood, they would always have a CERT member in attendance. Many times it was me. Many times it was some of our battalion coordinators and area members, so we could get the CERT perspective. So I have a deep insight into both Map Your Neighborhood and Ryland. So it's not like Disaster First Aid where you will come out with a hand coming out of the forehead. This is more my speed. So we're going to talk about that tonight. What is Map Your Neighborhood and what is Ryland? Map Your Neighborhood and Ryland, which stands for Ready Your Los Angeles neighborhood, are pretty much two of the same things. And what it does is it basically is ground level for a neighborhood. It's great for anybody who is CERT trained or not. If you're just a regular neighborhood member, what it does is it gives you the basic steps on how to map your neighborhood, which is part of the name. It also gives you an idea of certain things you should look for in terms of resources, whether they're tools, whether they're people with skills. Those are resources as well. It also gives you an idea of what you should be setting up in your neighborhood for disaster time, like elder care centers, child care centers, how to put together a basic neighborhood team. And where CERT and other programs fit into it is that once you get through that, this is the hands-on. This is all of you folks getting a chance to put your hands on and do the things that you're being asked to do in Map Your Neighborhood in Ryland. So Map Your Neighborhood in Ryland are specifically created to be very basic. In fact, they've taken a lot of the language out of it, a lot of the FEMA terminology. They don't even call your staging area. They used to call that incident command. They dial it back because they want to take some of the intimidation out of it. As we know, the subject of disaster preparedness tends to make people's eyes glaze over because it sounds very broad and it sounds like it's very difficult to do. So we want to get people into that, and Map Your Neighborhood Ryland is a very good way to go. So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to go through the actual Map Your Neighborhood shingle. And it's called a shingle because and I don't have a physical copy of the book, but it looks like a shingle. It looks like your roof. If you look at your roof, you see you've got rows and rows and rows of shingles, and they kind of overlap. The Map Your Neighborhood and Ryland shingles are the same. And each section, as you peel it up, is a section, something you're going to learn, whether it's connecting with your neighbors, putting together a team, utility shut off, etc. So we're going to go into that. Are there any questions before I get started? Questions, comments, editorials, as I like to say.
I just wanted to say that you need to tell people what LAEMD is. Not everybody knows what all that alphabet soup is about.
I don't even know. I just say it because it sounds good. No, one day I'll actually say it, and I'm like, no, really, I don't know. The LAEMD stands for the Los Angeles Emergency Management Department. Most, if not all, major cities, most definitely, and some smaller cities, some mid-sized smaller cities have an emergency management department, and their jobs are exactly what you think it is, to help manage a city in times of an emergency. Now, an emergency can be everything from the ever-dreaded earthquake, but it can also be civil unrest. It can also be something as strange as like a large area event. To give you an example of that, one of the events that LAEMD worked on was the funeral for rapper Nipsey Hussle about two years ago. Because it was coming through the city of Los Angeles in multiple areas, they helped manage the fire department response, the LAPD response. They helped manage everything all the way down to sanitation, picking up everything that might have been left, after the crowds moved. And that includes the Lakers celebrations, the Dodgers celebrations. So it's a very, very wide area it's a very, very wide berth that they handle. So that's what your Los Angeles Emergency Management team does, is they work with different departments and they manage these disasters for these events. So that's what you got. And Valerie's got a picture of the shingle.
This is the Ryland shingle, but it's basically the same sort of thing. And this is what he's talking about. And we're going to go through all of these things. And when you do Map Your Neighborhood or Ryland with your neighborhood, you will get these and you'll work yourself through these. And as you can see, it's got lots of pictures and all this stuff. So it's got like worksheets. So it's not all that intimidating. It's actually set up to literally hold your hand through the entire process of preparing your neighborhood. And at the very back, we have these, I'm okay, obviously everything's backwards, guys, but this, and so Chin is going to talk to you about all these things, but this is what he was talking about, a shingle.
And Valerie, can you hold that front page up to the screen? If you look here just a little bit on the right side of your screen for most people, it says right over here, featuring MYN, that is Map Your Neighborhood. Just so you folks know, the Ready Your Los Angeles Neighborhood program, the LAEMD actually licensed the Map Your Neighborhood program. So the backbone of the Ryland program is the Map Your Neighborhood program. So when we're talking about both, we're talking about them pretty interchangeable. So
Right.
Just wanted to point that out since you do have the shingle.
Right. And then it goes through, all the different steps and each part of what you're going to do.
And we're going to go and we're going to go through that shingle and we're going to talk about some things. We're not going to get caught deep in the weeds on everything in the shingle, but we're going to talk about the main parts of it. And we also will do some show and tell as well. And Valerie, you are my Vanna White tonight, so I am Pat Sage. Yes. Turn those letters. So what I am going to do now is I am going to share my screen, because I'm actually going to put the Map Your Neighborhood shingle up. Oh wow, everybody can see my duty roster for call out. There we go. And we are going to go over Come on, guys. We're going to go over here to the map your neighborhood. This is the traditional map your neighborhood shingle right here. Valerie has the Ready Your Los Angeles neighborhood version, and I have the traditional map your neighborhood. Here's a little history for everybody. Map your neighborhood started about maybe 10 or maybe a little bit more, 10 or more years ago, back up in the Pacific Northwest, up in the Seattle, Washington area. And it was created by a woman by the name of Luann, I believe, I forget, of something called cope preparedness. What she was trying to figure out was the easiest way to get people disaster prepared. As you know, the Pacific Northwest suffers from its own set of disasters, including some earthquakes. So she came up with this program, and it became one of the leading programs that cities, states, and counties and others like to use for disaster preparedness. As I said, the Los Angeles Emergency Management Department licenses the chassis here and uses it for its Ready Your Los Angeles neighborhood. Now, if you're a longtime CERT like Valerie and a few others of us who are here, the previous program that LAEMD scrapped was the 5 Steps program. The 5 Steps program its aim was similar, helping you to create a program, but it was a little bit top heavy, which I think is what kind of killed that program. So they brought in the Map Your Neighborhood, which I think is a little bit easier for people to digest in small bits and pieces. So this is the front page of your shingle. That would be the shingle, very similar to what Valerie has, but Map Your Neighborhood, Ryland. Don't lose your mind; it's all the same stuff. In a disaster, your most immediate source of help are the neighbors living around you. That is something we say all the time. That particular line is not unique to anything we do. But the critical part is that the Map Your Neighborhood and Ryland programs focus on one street at a time and 15 to 20 homes or a defined area that you can canvass within what is called golden hour. Now, the studies that Map Your Neighborhood did show that 15 to 20 homes are the easiest for a team or a team of individuals to canvass within that 1 hour period. So with that thought in mind, if you have a very large street, a very long street or something like that, the idea is that one team, one group will have 15 to 20 homes they're responsible for. Let's say you've got 45 homes. Let's keep this very simple because math is not my strongest suit. That's why I went to television. If you have a neighborhood of 45 homes, theoretically, you can put together at least 2 teams, but definitely 3 teams three separate teams to try to manage those 15 to 20 homes within that area. Again, the idea is for you to be able to canvass a neighborhood within 1 hour, which is a golden hour. You hear the golden hour talk a great deal about it in the medical aspect of getting people to a hospital and getting them treatment within that 1 hour. They have a better chance of living. Same case here. You want to make sure that you're able to make sure your neighbors, your family, and everybody else is good within that first hour. Or if they do need medical transport or some kind of medical attention or whatever else, whether it's utility shutoff, you want to make sure you try to hit that within that first hour, because if you hit it in that first hour, more than likely you're going to have success with whatever you do. So this is the Ryland shingle, and we're just going to kind of duck down here. A lot of stuff that happens with Map Your Neighborhood Ryland takes place long before you get to this point where you're sitting with your neighbors trying to hammer out that plan. There's a lot of prep that has to go on. One of the things neighborhood leaders are asked to do is get to know your neighbors, canvass your neighborhood. Map Your Neighborhood in Ryland works wonderful in neighborhoods that have established infrastructures, neighborhood associations, block clubs, all of those types of things. Usually it's easy because those people, those leaders, those block captains, those association presidents can just go up and down lists they already have and start pulling people into the process. For some of you who live in neighborhoods where you're not quite that organized, or if you don't have connections with your neighbors, it's going to be a little bit harder for you. It's not impossible. It takes a little bit more work. And please remember that when we talk to you about these things, we're here as the NTP people, as the neighborhood team program people, we're here to support you in that. So when you get to that point, let us know and we can help you. We can help you with some of that canvassing. We can help you with trying to get interest up and going. Moving on, it's asking you to prepare, which is exactly what you're doing. And I skip these kind of things because these are the things we already know and talk about. One thing we'll talk about are the 9 steps to take immediately following a disaster. And you'll see that talked a great deal about in Map Your Neighborhood and the Ryland Plan. I will show you what those 9 steps are. Stand by, those are coming. Again, like I said at the top, you're identifying skills and equipment inventory that each neighbor has that are useful and effective in a disaster and its response. Here's the kicker, guys. When you guys start doing your exercise, when you're actually putting this together in your neighborhood, don't volunteer people. Hey, Chin down the street has a truck. If Chin is not there to say, I'm going to let you use my truck, you can mark that down as a potential, but then make sure you reach out to that person later on and confirm that they will let you use it. Don't surprise anybody and volunteer them for that. So you're looking at that, creating a neighborhood map, identifying locations of everything from your hazards like natural gas, electricity, different things like that. You're also going to use that same neighborhood map to plot out where you're going to put your elder care and your child care areas, your staging area. You're going to do that and create a contact list. The contact list, like I said, with you folks who have structured groups already. I know like Westside Village, even our friends over in Leimert Park, Grayburn Avenue, that part was already done because they've got a structured list. And then the most creative, the most critical part is working together as a team. To evaluate your neighborhood after a disaster, I want to read this line word for word. To evaluate your neighborhood after a disaster and take the necessary action. Your team will cover about 15 to 20 homes or a defined area that you can canvass within a 1-hour period. So this, your initial plan, I should say, may start out a little bit broad, and you'll probably will have more than 50 to 20 homes. You'll probably have a wide area that you're just like, oh my God. But the idea is that as time goes by, you guys are going to narrow that down, find more people to participate, and get that down to that 15 to 20 homes. Do not worry if you start off with an unusually larger area than what's being prescribed here. A lot of neighborhoods start off that way and then they start dialing back. That's why every year we also encourage you guys to do drills and exercises so you can update your program. And you guys need to understand, you need to update this program each and every year because people come into the neighborhood, they go out of the neighborhood, people die, unfortunately, whatever. You need to update that to fit the latest. And you need to update it too as the landscape of your neighborhood changes, as single family homes go down and much denser communities go up, or whichever way. Mapping your neighborhood. Start your neighborhood before you meet. As I said, get your block facilitator. That's what they call it. Walk around, find out who's interested, and get those people involved in the planning process. During your meeting, you do have a DVD that you can watch. Even Jason, who did the presentations on Map Your Neighborhood, he and I both agree the DVD is not that critical to your success. It's sort of there as filler. And it really doesn't add a whole lot. It doesn't give you any information that you can't already get from just doing the program itself. So you can watch the video or you don't have to. I'm not going to lose my mind over it. Neither is Jason, who presented it twice for us. After your meeting, it is important that you do reconnect with your local your local emergency management department, especially if you're here in Los Angeles. And the LAEMD will tell you what they don't do is they don't keep the initial information of what you guys are doing. They do that because a lot of people have issues with the government having information about them, and that makes the program a little bit harder to sell if people are reticent are not comfortable with people having their information. So the Los Angeles Emergency Management Department actually does not keep a lot of the information. They don't even really keep the contact information for anybody. But what you can do as area leaders, you can reach out to the LAEMD and report information you want them to have, like how many people in your neighborhood are participating. If the people in your neighborhood agree that they don't mind that, you can let the LAEMD know. You can let them know as much or as little as you want them to know. But they will at least keep a tag on, hey, we do at least have a program located in Westside Village, but probably not much more than that unless you specify. There are a lot of online support materials, and this is true with the Ryland program as well. And in fact, for those of you here in Los Angeles, the Ryland program, the Ready Your Los Angeles Neighborhood program, has almost entirely gone online. The reason being are a couple things. Getting support from the LAEMD. Valerie, as you know, we had a area coordinator in every area. We had one in Valley, we had one in West Bureau, we had one in South Bureau, we had two in South Bureau. And then we had a couple we had one in Central Bureau or two. Due to cutbacks and just overall city belt tightening, especially during this COVID-19 period, the LAMD is not really, and they'll tell you this, they're not keeping it secret, they're not able to assist you with this effort as they once did. And the second reason they are not able to assist you in a great manner is that they can't come to your house anymore. They can't come to your house because of COVID-19. God forbid they bring it in your house. God forbid they catch it from your house or whatever it is. So that's another problem. And as part of that belt tightening, they are not necessarily available to attend events like this one. For those of you who would really want that Ryland assistance, you will have to have your meetings between Monday through Friday, generally 9 to 5, generally 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And that's what they've got. Any questions, comments, or editorials on that? That anybody want me to clarify anything I've said up to this point?
Yeah, I'd like you to talk a little bit about contacting LAEMD. I mean, they're so strapped. I don't know if they even want to hear from us necessarily. And what is it they're keeping track of? Where are they keeping track of it? And why are they keeping track of it?
They're, again, as far as the information goes, they're just keeping track of where the plan is deployed, where they have talked about the Ryland plan. They're not keeping the inner workings unless it's something you really want to give to them. They're, like I said, they're keeping as much or as little of the information as possible. What they have found is that most people don't want to submit that information to a governmental entity, and they don't. So I don't know why, but you'll have to ask people who don't want the government to know. The government already knows, and as far as I know, they know to send me a tax bill every year, but they're not keeping a great deal of that information. And Valerie, you're very much right. The LAEMD is strapped. And let me just kind of roll off the rails for a quick minute and just let you know. Pre-COVID, the Los Angeles Emergency Management Department had a staff of nearly 40 people. That was pre-COVID. Once COVID came in, and it paired itself up with a couple of other circumstances, including early retirements and stuff like that, they are now at this very moment down to 27 people. They are down almost 15 people, and that is very significant, especially when it comes to their outreach. And they'll tell you, God forbid if we have a massive emergency in this city, they're going to be very, very much under the hammer to try to manage that. So They would love to hear from you, but if you call them and you do not get a call back, understand why you may not be getting that call back. And that's why they are pushing the self-serve version of Ready Your Los Angeles Neighborhood. What that self-serve version is it tells you how to teach the process to your neighbors. Like Valerie, for instance, you would get your Westside Village people together, do some mapping. You know, the LAMD can give you some maps of your area. They can help you out with that maps, and they can send you the shingle in mail, or you can come pick it up. But Valerie, you would be the lead person teaching that to your area. And just so you know, it's not designed for you to like go all over the city teaching it. You will get some preliminary coaching and some points to look at in your very area. So,
I mean, to clarify, the idea is to have somebody on each block coordinating with the neighbors on their block.
exactly. That's what this whole thing is about. So,
Can I add to that? Hi.
Ellie, go ahead.
Hey, thanks. Hi, Valerie. We did a radio workshop years ago. So I just retired from the city in April, and I was really involved with disaster housing stuff and interacted with emergency management and everybody a lot. And of course, with the pandemic and managing the emergency operations center, yeah, they're really busy. I put a couple links in the chat. I know that they were working on having a version of Ryland that individual apartment buildings can use to plan it as well. And I emailed a friend of mine who is our emergency management coordinator, who works a lot with them to see what's happening. But that's also a resource, because in our neighborhood, there are a lot of apartment buildings as well as family homes. And so that, you know, that's the kind of resource that we can make available to everybody as well. So,
and Sally, you kind of take us into an area that needs to be addressed as well. When the Los Angeles Emergency Management Department did some updates to the Ryland program and Map Your Neighborhood as well, they do include a section for dense communities. That stands for pretty much apartments, condos, and all of those different communities. And those communities have to be organized in a particular manner as well. So, and it's very much different, as Sally has said, when you're talking about single family homes. So that is something that we'll talk about briefly later on in the process. So this is one part of it. Let's go to section.
Question before you jump on.
Yes.
Did you say, excuse me, this is very interesting, and I'm interested in getting my block involved. Did you say that these booklets are available for me to distribute to 10 of my neighbors and get them involved as a mapping process? How would we get like 10 or 12 of these shingles?
What you would do is once you get everything together, what they want you to do is they want you to do some pre-meeting work. One, that's talk to your neighbors, which you already have people who are interested. Define who those people are, which you pretty much already have. And then what you can do is get in touch with the Los Angeles Emergency Management Department, and we can help you with that too, because we're working with them a lot more now. We just had a meeting with them today, and you're going to see a lot more of them at these NTP sessions. More on that later. But you get in touch with them, let them know, hey, I'm the area team leader over here on Malcolm or wherever it is you are. I'm getting ready to do a session. Please send me about 10 or 15 booklets, and they'll get that stuff out to you. They will also ask you and give you any preliminary training you might need or want to put this thing out to your neighborhood. They will help you that much.
Hey, Jim.
That's good information. So I get in touch with the local group. Is that what you're saying?
You mean the Los Angeles Emergency Management Department?
I get in touch with the Los Angeles Emergency Department, and they would supply the information, right?
They will supply you that information and the materials. Sally, I saw you come in there.
Oh, I was just going to say, I put the link. So if anybody, if you look in the chat, you can see readyla.org. If you go there, it has all kinds of information of how to start. So that's why I put it in there.
Absolutely. And, and,
Ken, it's
and EMD, I'll get this point out. And I'll get to the next question. And EMD too will, as I have said, is starting to become more of a presence in some form or fashion here with these sessions. And like I said, more on that's to come. Comment.
Chin, it's Sandy Tanaka. I did get in touch with EMD for South Bureau,
Mhm.
and I was told that they will not furnish the material, that I could go online and download the PDFs and print them out or have people look at them online, whatever, but they wouldn't furnish me with the material, which is what I was looking for.
Really, that's very interesting. I'm going to have to address that with Prasanta when we meet with them in the next couple of days. We met with them today on some avenues, and up to this point, they said they would supply that material, even if they had to send it in the mail or if you had to come and pick it up and they just leave it at the curb or whatever. So maybe there's been a slight change that we're not finding out about here. I will clarify.
Okay, I appreciate that.
You got it, Sandy, and good to see you from Battalion 6. So here you've got in front of you the Map Your Neighborhood discussion guide. And this is this again, whatever you see here is very much replicated in Riley. There's very little difference between the two programs. Of course, this is the chassis. This is your workbook from here. And you have a series of objectives that you want to accomplish when you're meeting with neighbor, when you're meeting with your neighbor group. And I've seen this several times. I got to tell you that when the neighbors all get in one yard and they're doing this, this was of course pre-COVID when you could get together and do this. It was amazing. And the one thing I will always say, and there are some people who poo-poo this program in Ryland. I will say it's a great way of getting people who are not necessarily CERT trained or, hardcore CERT and all that kind of stuff. People who just want to kind of get their feet wet. Once they start doing this, they really get into it. And it's supposed to take about 90 minutes. Ryland is supposed to be like done within 90 minutes, but this one has a significantly larger timeline. But people get into it and they don't really worry about the time. So during the neighborhood preparedness meeting, you and your neighbors will learn the 9 steps to take immediately following a disaster, identify the skills and equipment each neighbor has. We talked about that, and create a map of the neighborhood. One thing I want to do before I get way too deep in the weeds is I want to give you guys an idea of what the 9 steps are. And try to get rid of this little thing right here. And where is it? The document package. For those of you who are connected to our NTP website, it's www.ntp-la.com, I believe. I find that disturbing that I have to try to remember what our own website is. But for those of you who are connected, you have a document package in there, and these are the 9 steps that you should be performing after a moderate earthquake. These 9 steps were not made up by me or anybody associated with me, but these are the 9 steps that were also created by the Map Your Neighborhood people, and it's also used by the LAEMD as part of Ryland. And let's take a quick run through of the 9 easy steps. Step 1, take care of yourself and your loved ones first. Basic tenet and CERT. That's the basic tenet anywhere. Before you can help anybody else, you got to make sure you're okay, and you got to make sure that family is okay. Then after that, you can blaze out of there and start hanging out with your neighborhood team. Protect yourself, your hands, head, and feet. One thing that we did add to the 9 easy steps is while you're doing that, you can turn on your FRS radios, the radios that are keeping you in link with your neighborhood team. You can turn that on to your predetermined neighborhood channel. And I believe Westside Village is channel 6. We have other areas like Miracle Mile, which is channel 4, Leimert Park, which is channel 5, West End, which is channel 3, blah, blah, blah. And everybody will meet on that channel. Inspect your home, natural gas valves, and shut it off if you smell, hear, or see gas leaking. Basic stuff again. But again, keep in mind that once you turn that gas off, you do not turn it back on. Only the gas company does it. So only turn off your gas if you absolutely need to. And don't turn it on because you don't know. You might blow yourself sky high and end up looking like Wile E. Coyote because you don't know all of your pilots. And I don't care if you lived in your house 40 years. You don't know the damage to your pipes, etc. Shut off your home water main to protect the water in your water heater from contamination and reverse damage. And Valerie, where's that post okay and help sign? Valerie, Vanna, you got that post okay sign? Well, she showed it. Well, she showed it a little bit earlier. And
There.
there she is. Here she comes.
It's on the back of the shingle.
That's it. And when she flips it up, it says okay or need help. That I got to tell you is really one of the best things because it tells your neighborhood team when they're walking by whether they can kind of keep walking and help other people who might need help or if they need to stop and help you. So that's a really great thing. And that was also something else pioneered with the Map Your Neighborhood people, which also comes with the Ryland neighborhood shingle, as you see. This one always gets discussion going. Step 6, consider placing a fire extinguisher on the sidewalk in case a team or your neighbor needs one to put out a small fire. The thing we always hear in Los Angeles is that thing might take legs and walk away. And I agree. So, decide whether that's something you want to do. You guys can actually, if you guys have a particularly tight neighborhood, you guys could say, hey, for my neighbors, it's going to be tucked up here on the porch, right behind this little post right here, or whatever. Just as long as if you do this, your folks know where to grab stuff. And Valerie, I don't know why I just started thinking about Ron Sokoloff and his group over in South Carthage. They were a particularly cohesive group over there. I used to love going over and watching their drills because it did all of this. And actually, Valerie, you know this, they were so cohesive over there that they had key access to each other's backyards. I don't know how many people would do that today. I'm not saying you should, but that's cohesive neighborhood. So if you consider doing something like that, let your neighbors know where things are placed. It's just a suggestion, but these things are good in case we do run into small fires, and these small extinguishers are very good at putting out those small fires. What we define as a small fire is something about as big as a garbage can under your desk. Anything bigger than that, you got to get out. So you're not going to be able to do anything about it. Head directly to your check-in at your closest neighborhood gathering site. That's one of the things you will determine as part of this plan. We call it the staging area or incident command, whatever it is. But you can call it to your neighborhood gathering site. And if you're CERT trained, head directly, there it is, head directly to your CERT staging area. Because one of the things we want to let you guys know is that those are two different areas. Your neighborhood gathering site, that is where your neighbors will go. The reason why we separate the CERT trained site or just the area team site is because our neighbors, we love them to death and we're doing this for them, but they can slow us the heck down sometimes with a lot of questions, a lot of wanting to knows. And, that's just natural. That's just natural. But we have to kind of get the process going. So we put them over here, like a block away, and we put ourselves here at our staging area, which many times is out of sight of the general public because we don't necessarily want that. We don't necessarily want those, we don't necessarily want to be held back on our timelines. And that's why the LA City Fire Department will tell you when they're doing what they call their windshield survey, just to give you perspective. When they're driving through the neighborhood and the engine, they're going that way and that way. And you're like saying, hey, can I ask you something? They'll drive right past you and keep going. It's not because they're being rude, but if they don't continue doing that windshield survey, they will never get a handle on how the area is looking in terms of its condition. And they just have to kind of ignore you and keep going. It's not because they're being mean. If you come out of there with your head hanging off on this side, they will stop. That's a big one, but otherwise they will keep going. And we kind of have to do the same thing too, because we need to get staged and out into the neighborhood as soon as we can. Organize your response at the CERT staging area. And like I said, it'll be your neighborhood team area or neighborhood gathering site. I don't really push that idea because again, there's too many distractions at the neighborhood gathering site. Send out damage assessment teams. Those are 3 members. In some cases, it can be 2 members. And all those damage assessment teams do is assess exactly what the name is. You don't necessarily get involved in trying to pull somebody out of a building or wrapping broken arms or whatever it is. You assess and you triage. Again, it's like our windshield, it's like our version of a windshield survey. Now, once we find those situations, we can radio back to our staging area, let them know that they might need medical attention, and then another team hopefully can come out and handle that information while you continue on and assess. Help signs and homes without signs or with known vulnerable residents. Responders are always in teams of at least 3. No one goes anywhere alone, and that's for accountability and safety. Even if you're a smaller team of 2, you can do 2 as an assessment team. You are like flypaper with your partner. As bad as I hate to say it, if I have to go to the bathroom for a quick minute, my partner will probably be somewhere very close by. And I don't like that idea. I really hate that idea. But we're moving on. and teams will communicate back to the staging area with their radios. And that's why the FRS system of radios is so pushed. Response teams are formed as needed and deal with confirmed incidents. That is what I was talking about. Step 9, meet back at the staging area periodically to gather new resources and report response actions or to learn about new issues that have been reported. The other thing you want to add to that is you want to change out your responders. As much as you guys probably will be all keyed up and out there doing and seeing stuff, you need to come out of the field from time to time. You need to come out because it's like, as fun as this may sound, you may see some things that you don't want to see or that you can't unsee. And that's people you know who may not have made it, people you know who are in a dissociated condition. You may have to make some decisions out there that you don't necessarily want to make. You might have to leave Mr. X here because, he's not breathing. We did head tilt, chin lift a couple times, and he's still not breathing. We got to move on and say, Ms. Linda over here who may have a broken leg, and we can save her. So we want to get our people out of the field as much as we can, and rotate them out. And that goes into like deeper discussions of psychological counseling and everything that we're not going to get into, but keep that in mind. These are the 9 steps you should take after a moderate or large earthquake. Any questions, comments, or editorials? Well, all right now. I'm going to kind of get back here and then we'll keep rolling ahead. And the discussion guide, these are kind of some stuff here. Prior to the neighborhood meeting, figure out your neighborhood boundaries. Define what your neighborhood is, folks. Even if you define it on the biggest level possible. My little street here, and it's a tired little street over here. I say that with love. I did the assessment on my own neighborhood. I have 75 addresses on my little street, and it literally is one street with a cul-de-sac. And so it's 75 homes in here. So do the math on how many teams I need to set up. I need to set up at least 4 teams. And I'll admit to you, I don't necessarily have that right now. So I'm working with what I've got. So figure out what your neighborhood boundaries are. And again, they recommend 15 to 25 houses. It was 15 to 20 early on, but see, they pushed it a little. Invite all your neighbors to attend, as you would. And prepare for the meeting by creating a master neighborhood map in advance. And you can do that I did mine with with Google Maps. I just literally went on and just, did like a Google Earth and, did all that stuff. It really worked for me. I didn't have to go fabulous, but you can ask the LAEMD to assist you with that. And as far as I know, from my last conversation with them, which was just about a week ago, they will supply you with maps and different things like that. But again, there are some things I need to look into to see if they've changed. And mark your maps. Number your lots sequentially. Include house numbers if you can, and include the names of neighbors if you know them. You may not be able to do all of that, but whatever you can put together puts you ahead of the game. For the meeting, have pens, pencils, pads, and all that kind of stuff for you and your neighbors. I like to tell my neighbors, bring your own stuff, because I'm a poor guy. I don't have that stuff to give to you. The first thing you want to do is introduce your neighbors. Introduce yourself to your neighbors, unless you all know each other, but hopefully you guys have neighbors who have not reached out in the neighborhood or haven't had a chance to come to something like that. And then get to know your neighbors. The key to all of this, the key to any disaster plan is knowing your neighbors before the disaster hits. If you are trying to meet your neighbors the morning of that disaster, you're done. You're done. It's too much to try to figure out who's got what. What about that guy up the street who's the CERT guy or the construction guy? You got to know everybody beforehand. I don't know why we can't seem to grab onto that, and get into it. So going around the room and meeting each other, you can move down, and then in the next 90-minute period, learn the 9 steps. Identify the skills and equipment that each neighbor has. And again, all skills, all equipment can be used. I usually ask this question of a live audience. You have an EMT, you have a CERT person, you have a contractor, and you have the guy who plays guitar at the church. Question: who is the most valuable person in that group? Most people love to say the first 3 people, but actually everybody is valuable in that group. Because if, let's say, you set up an elder care center or a child care center, who's going to entertain them? Who's going to read? Who's going to read those stories? Who's going to play that guitar? And if he can only play one guitar, you might have to get a few guitarists there just to kind of rotate that out. You can only play one tune, but they are all valuable, and mark that down. Create a map showing locations of each natural gas meter and propane tank, if you've got one. And if you're back east, you got oil tanks and they bring water. But because the likelihood of this causing fire is low, you don't need to really map their locations. But everybody at every home, whether you are an apartment dweller or a single family home or a large home, whatever it is, or if you're Aaron Spelling's mansion, you need to know where that gas meter is, because if that gas meter breaks, it doesn't matter whether you're John Q. Public in your small home or you're Aaron Spelling up there. You need to get out there and turn that gas off. And everybody needs to know basic utility shut off. Everybody should know that. And each neighbor who may need extra help following disasters, including those who are elderly, those with disabilities, and children. And think about children who may be home during the day. Think about those kids who are at home, like the ones that are here now, who are here in the summer. You got to know all of that. I know we don't always like the idea of putting out our routines, who's in our house, who lives there, to our neighbors. We're scared that sometimes I tell my neighbor, it's like I leave here every morning at 8 o'clock, and I come back and my house is robbed because they know I'm gone between 8 and 3. Let people you trust in the neighborhood know that information, because somebody needs to know. Think about it. If you're away from home and there's an earthquake, if your neighbor on the south side of you is somebody you trust, a disaster assessment team or somebody's coming by, they don't see a sign in your window, they can knock on your door and they don't know if you're in there or not. Your neighbor can come out and say, you know what? Sally is not there. it's like she's all good. She's not here. She's away from the area, but she's not in that house. You want that. You want somebody to know. Not necessarily everybody, because there's some riffraff neighbors. I know a few of them that I wouldn't tell anything, but there are those out there who you will tell and should tell. And then you go into the assumptions about disasters. You make sure everybody knows the myths and the truths. A disaster in any event that overwhelms the capacity of 9/11 emergency responders. This could be anything like they've got down there, like they got listed: eruption, volcanic eruption. That reminds me of the movie Volcano. Bad movie. Or Volcano in the middle of Wilshire Boulevard is pretty crappy. But all of those things overwhelm the capacity of 911. In fact, on my second day in college, back in 1988, I was out at Cal State LA on my second day in college. We had the Whittier Narrows earthquake that morning, around 8:22 in the morning. I remember it as if it were yesterday. Do you know a memo was found at LA City Fire Department, which our captain shared with us some years ago? Within 8 minutes, every resource they had, that's an engine company, truck company, rescue ambulance, plug buggy, pickup truck, anything they had that was red and had the city seal on it was already out there within 8 minutes. As far as the phone system of 911, it was saying all circuits are busy now. Please try later. 8 minutes. So, and that earthquake wasn't even centered in the Los Angeles area. 911 emergency responders are fire, medical, and police and utility personnel. We don't always think of people like Southern California Gas and the Department of Water and Power as first responders, but they are. And you have to understand that if there's a major emergency, they too will not be available. We've already been told that in a major earthquake, we could lose 10,000 pipes under our city. 10,000 pipes, and most of those pipes date back to 1906. So just saying, if 911 has so many people needing them, they can't get to everyone. In other words, they will be overwhelmed. That's the main points of it all. And that's the reason why you're having this meeting to get your people together. For the purposes of responding to disasters, you want to define your neighborhood boundaries, where that is. You also want to create a map of where your teams are going to respond. And immediately follow the disaster. Do the 9 steps to immediately follow. And these are all spelled out here. We already talked about them, so we don't need to go through all of that right now. Do learn how to use a fire extinguisher. It is not that hard. All you have to do is just keep one thing in mind, something called PASS. PASS. On your fire extinguisher over there, pull the little key in there. That's going to let the handle go up and let the handle go up and down. Aim it at the base of your fire, not in the middle of the fire, not up fire, not at your face or anything like that. At the base of your fire, squeeze the trigger and sweep along the base of that fire. Use everything you've got in that extinguisher. You've got about 8 to 12 seconds of propellant in there, and no sense on being stingy about anything. Use it up, get that fire out. And like I said, if the fire is a small one, you'll get it out. If you just remember that takes practice. And you can see the images of the extinguisher along the sidewalk. I still wouldn't do that, not necessarily. I live in LA too. And check in at your gathering site. Again, this is going through everything that we've kind of talked about. Topic 4, again, identifying neighborhood skills and equipment useful in response. Think of everything: shovels, gardening tools, lumber, vehicles. How many of your neighbors have minivans? How many of your neighbors have back pickup trucks? All that kind of stuff. Because guess what, guys? You might end up using this stuff to either haul equipment, haul debris, or haul people. You might end up finding yourself, you might have a neighbor there who's really in such bad off condition that you're going to take the chance and take them to your area emergency room. And by the way, just since we kind of wandered into that, in speaking to our area emergency hospitals like Cedars and the former Olympia Medical Center, everybody's going to be doing the same thing. They're all going to be triaging too. If you have people in the neighborhood who are not badly injured, don't send them to the hospital. Don't tell them to go to the hospital, because they will end up going to the hospital and they will be made to wait someplace. And it just doesn't even make any sense. Only send people who need to be there to the hospital. And again, your equipment will help you do that. Other equipment you can use, tear down that little sign that says no parking 12 noon to 3 on Thursdays. I'm not kidding. You can actually use some of those things. And we learned this in CERT about using levers. You know, you might be able to use that to lift up some bricks off of somebody's leg and get them out. You have to be creative. So take down those things. Street signs along my little street, yanking them down, and different things like that. So be very creative. Find out who has first aid training or who would be willing to help after a disaster. Again, like I said, don't volunteer people. You know, hey, Joy's a nurse over there. Joy may not even be around because she's got to run into the hospital like 5 minutes after the earthquake. And 2, she's like, huh? I don't even know you people. So I'm just saying, don't volunteer anybody. You can mark down, who you think has skills and everything, but reach out to those people later if they're not at the meeting and find out if they're willing to do it. Very, 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 very critical. In fact, near me, a friend of mine who's been a friend of mine for over 20 years, he just retired after 37 years with the LA City Fire Department. He was telling me, he says, I can't get my neighbors over here to accept the fact, and this was when he was on the job. He said, I can't get them to understand the fact that I'm not going to be here. I'm going to look at the house. I'm going to make sure my wife is cool, and I'm jumping in the car and I'm gone for probably days. Couldn't get people to understand that. You got to find out who's going to be your responders. And the one thing I will too say is make sure everybody knows the plan, because Valerie, Valerie's one of my favorite leaders over there. But Valerie might take a vacation, and Valerie's like a traveling type. She jumps on planes and goes to places like Vietnam and stuff. And so if she's not there the morning of the disaster, it's like a lot of her neighbors going to be standing there saying, uh-oh. So everybody needs to know this plan and be very much a part of it, a part of the planning. They also need to understand that they might have to step up and lead the plan.
I certainly hope I'm somewhere more interesting.
You're always in interesting places. So, and, neighborhood maps and contact lists. Again, we've talked about that. The contact list, if you guys are an organized area like Westside Village, Grayburn Avenue, who I know is hanging out here tonight, and who says, stop making a big deal out of this. If you're like any one of these areas that I have since named, you already have a contact list and you can work from there, and you can actually recruit from there. And that's good to have, and for your trusted people to have, even if the entire group doesn't have it. So there you go. And I think a lot of this stuff is just going through the actual process. Your contact list, there is in the Map Your Neighborhood and the Ryland shingle, a little sheet on the back that you can pencil in people's names and numbers and all that kind of stuff. Hey, a Word doc works for me, Word or Excel. There it is. Thank you, Vanna, for putting that up there. You can, and it's got things on it like, name, address, skills, different things you can put down.
It also asks you to list your pets and your kids.
Yes, because pets and kids are very much part of the family. And they actually go back through this whole this whole 9 steps again. And the reason why they do go through it a number of times is they want to make sure that you and your neighbors know what to do. So many people, including CERT members, I'm gonna be up front with you. A lot of CERT members don't know what to do after an earthquake or a major disaster. Those are members who are not necessarily the most active. They may not be engaged with the refreshers we do or the area exercise, all that kind of stuff. So, you know, I'm just being honest here, keeping it real, guys. You might find somebody wearing that CERT shirt out there who doesn't quite know which way to go. Just happens. But if you're lucky, you got Val. She's got you. She's gonna whip you into shape.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. And I think Phil is here someplace too. And you know, he can help us out too. I know you're hiding out there, Phil. And this is an image. And what we just saw was pretty much the bulk of the shingle. This is that OK help sign that we talked about. And it doesn't matter if it's not in red or whatever it is. Now, Sally brought this up a little bit earlier, and I kind of want to visit it. This is Map Your Neighborhood's version of MYN. They call it vertical neighborhoods. We in Los Angeles, we probably call them vertical neighborhoods too. We call them dense neighborhoods. We call them whatever, condo communities, whatever you want to call them. Again, if you are in one of those buildings, you really should have a plan as well. Our call out team a couple of years back, I think Phil, you worked that fire over on Barrington and Wilshire. High-rise fire, and they were under the handle. They were under the hammer to get people out of there. If you have some sense of organization and a leader on each of those floors, and depending on what kind of building you're in, you might have to have 2 or 3 team leaders on a single floor. You know, look at the buildings that are going up right now. Buildings going up in my area are like 54 units. You know, the site of a gas station is now 54 units. I'm like, I didn't even know you could stick that many on there, but we're building more dense. And that's what everybody kind of needs to understand. The vertical communities or the dense communities, this was something that really was specifically asked for by many people who use this, who have looked at this plan. They've asked for it here in terms of Ryland, and they've asked for it with the original Map Your Neighborhood. Both of them did upgrades to include that. So if you live in one of those dense communities, definitely look at doing this. So this is something you have to look at. So that's pretty much it. That took me all the way to 8:10. Questions, comments, discussions. As I like to always say, Valerie, I'm not that good. So I know there's a question or two out there.
I want to know about this dense community program. Is that now online where people can get hold of that shingle as well?
Yes, it is. And
Okay.
I just, in speaking to the EMD today, guys, give you a little inside information, which is coming up. They're actually even going to have a Ryland app that they're going to be rolling out, I believe, sometime later this year. So you will be able to get that, you know, the traditional single family homes and the dense communities version on paper, on your app, on your computer screen.
Right. So with the dense community, I'm imagining that you probably have to have a team almost for each floor.
Mm-hmm. You really do. And like I said a few minutes ago, you may even have to have more than one team depending on just how big that building is. One of the things that we've been doing, and we're doing it with our West Adams area, and I know we talked about this on one of our previous NTPs here, is we are working with some of the management companies. We've actually started out with one over here in West Adams, the CIM group, who is relatively large and has a lot of developments around the city. We are working with them, at least starting the talking process of bringing NTP into their buildings. And so hopefully we're looking at things like doing new neighbor orientations and workshops And those may be some things that you guys can do as well in your apartment buildings. And again, if you try to do this, please reach out for us to help if you need help, and we'll help walk you through it as well. Any other questions, comments, or editorials? I really was that good?
Yeah, you've just stunned everyone into silence.
No, this is great. I really appreciate it. Yeah.
I-
And you have a very nice sense of humor, and you make it really easy and friendly and everything. So
because I've learned over the years, I've learned over my years not to take myself too seriously and have a little fun with it. Spent too much of my early life taking myself way too seriously. But you know, this is supposed to be fun. This is as much fun as it is work. And if we don't remind people of that, that's another thing that drives people away from doing this. Because, oh, it's so hard and it's work and it's grim and I have to talk about dead people and cut off legs. You know, and there is part of that. There's a reality to that, but we can have fun doing this. And the biggest thing to me, in addition to being a CERT, leader and an NTP guy, is I also lead a neighborhood team. I lead a neighborhood group, I should say. Small neighborhood association, super size, super small, like this big. And it helps us to fellowship with our neighbors. And that's something we need to do that we don't do a lot of. I've always said I miss the days of watching like Leave It to Beaver and Ozzie and Harriet, because whenever somebody came into the neighborhood, they welcomed them with a casserole, and that neighbor was always so happy to be known. We don't see that a lot. We see a lot of homes going up with fences around them and big tall bushes saying don't bother me. And I get it, but it's in the long run, you should know your neighbors. Patty, you have a question up there.
Actually, not necessarily a question per se. With regard to the fire extinguisher, I find that I can't pull out the pin because it's attached by the little plastic strap.
Mm-hmm.
So I twist and that breaks that and then pull. That's all.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
that's a very good point, is that if you do have that little, if you do, and most fire extinguishers have that, give it a twist. And that plastic is meant to be brittle. It's meant to just break off once you turn it. So that is a very good point, Patty. Thank you for bringing that up. And
One of the things I wanted to say about Ryland, to add to what you were saying, or mapping your neighborhood, is the idea is for it to be small, to start small and stay small. So it's supposed to just be your block. And so you just, invite the people on your block to meet on your patio, outside these days, and provide cookies. If you say there will be cookies, homemade cookies, and drinks or whatever, or just go to Costco or Trader Joe's or something. It's just a way to get to know your neighbors. One of the things Dr. Lucy Jones said is the most important thing you can do in preparing for a disaster is talk to your neighbors, is getting to know your neighbors. And I haven't been the best about that, I have to be honest. And I know some of the people on my block, but certainly not all the people on my block. So I've been hoping for COVID to die down a bit, and I wanted to invite people over to my patio so I can actually get to know more of them, and gives me an excuse to make some chocolate chip cookies and actually eat some.
Could you
The phrase
one more
is,
time list the contact information for the shingle so I can get a hold of one of them to start?
Yeah, it is on, it's in the chat.
In
and
the
I also
chat.
put-
Sally added it
also-
to the chat.
Yes, and I also put the NTP site in the chat. So there's 3 in there in the chat.
Okay, thank you. I'll look it up.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And one thing I'll say is I will attest that food will bring everybody out, because I will travel all over the city for everybody's free food. So if you have free food, call me. I'm there. And and
if
Valerie,
you want Chin's help.
that's right.
provide food.
As I like to say, I can be bought. Every man has his price, and food is mine. So, but it's a great way. It's a great way to fellowship with our neighbors. And one of the things we have to understand, there were a lot of lessons learned during the continuing COVID-19 nightmare. And in case you didn't know, folks, COVID-19 is actually considered a continuing incident. Even now, it
Oh,
never
yeah.
actually stopped. It never stopped. From that rough day on like March 16th of 2020, I remember that day because that was the last day I was at work in Studio City. They said, "Oh yeah, well, you'll come back tomorrow and we'll try working from home." They sent me a note that night and said, "You're not coming back." And I just got a picture from a friend of mine who was at the building. My desk looks like the day I left it 18 months ago. It's like a Twilight Zone episode. But it gives you a chance to fellowship. And these are the things that we learned during COVID-19. One, we learned just how unprepared we are. The fact that people were in line fighting each other to the death for toilet paper and water, that was disgusting. I'm just going to be honest with you. That was disgusting. And, early on, I had a chance to ask people who were coming and going because, I was somewhat prepared. I'm not going to say I was hugely prepared, but I was prepared to a point where I didn't have to be a part of that. I thank God for that. And I said, well, what's bringing you out here? It's like, I don't know. Everybody else is doing it, so I'm here. It's kind of like, would you jump off a cliff if everybody did? And other people just didn't know. They saw the horror of it and everything like that, and they jumped in. Think further. If this had been an earthquake, if this had been any other event, if there had been another incident that occurred in the city during that time, we'd been in some kind of trouble. So
And
that's
the
why.
thing is, the people who had an earthquake kit and were somewhat prepared, they had water, they probably had toilet paper, they had masks, they had gloves, they had first aid stuff. So, that earthquake kit is for anything. It's like when we had unrest and couldn't go out of our homes. If you were prepared, you had stuff. When the power goes out, when anything happens, it's not just earthquakes.
Yeah.
And one of the things in here what's on your screen here, Chin, is you've got the picture of the radio. And our radio guru, Phil, is on here. Learning to communicate, those little handheld ones just in your block will communicate really great. So you don't have to be running back and forth from one end to the other. And so learning how to use those handheld radios is an important part of being prepared as well.
And let me tell you something. And Sally, I'll come right back to you. I know you had a comment. I'm going to tell you something. As many of you who've known me and Phil and all that, we've gotten into like Peters and all the fantastic radios that cost like $1 billion or whatever it is. I got to tell you, in recent times, I've learned to have a very, 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 very great appreciation of that little radio you see down there on my screen down at the lower level. That little radio, which you get at Target or, the other electronics places, Big Five or whatever. Keep this in mind. You don't have to go down the radio rabbit hole. And I think Phil will agree with me with that. Phil is our radio guy, by the way. You don't have to go down that radio rabbit hole. If you can get communications just from you and a neighbor up the street, consider yourself big time lucky. Consider yourself having situational awareness of at least what's going on at the corner of your block. You don't have to have, it would be nice to have communications across the city, but you don't have to stress yourself out trying to get up to that point unless it's something you want to do. Some of us want to do that, and we go down that rabbit hole. But you don't have to. But if you can communicate just between you and your neighbors and your team, you're all good. Sally, you had a comment.
Yeah, I just want to put in a plug for getting earthquake insurance. So I started working in the city about a year before the 1994 Northridge earthquake, which affected us here in this neighborhood. And I worked for the housing department, and we were the ones that got the federal funds to make loans to people who didn't have earthquake insurance. Far fewer people have earthquake insurance now than did have then, and people have this illusion that the feds are going to come in and help you. Well, yeah, they're going to help somewhat, but they're not going to give you hundreds of thousands of dollars to fix your house. And the Small Business Administration. So the people say, oh, well, the deductible is so big. Well, it's better to have $15,000 or $20,000 you have to come up with, maybe with a home equity line of credit ready there to, tap into versus having no money. And it's kind of like people are letting fear of the deductible prevent them from getting the insurance that is going to enable you to rebuild your home, and much faster. The federal money comes much slower. And particularly for those who live in condominiums, those folks were the worst off, because if they didn't have insurance for their common areas, and there was a mix of folks who lived in them, there were young people, it was their first home, and there were elderly people who had, sold off their house and this was their nest egg and this is where they lived. Some people walked, some people didn't. It was a total mess. And financially, a lot of them never recovered. So particularly make sure if you're in a condo building or people, I just told a friend's sister that the other day on the Valley, make sure your condo association has earthquake insurance for the common areas, and you should have it yourself. And I'm just kind of always surprised when I meet intelligent people who have decided, nah, yeah, of course, I don't like spending the money to give it to the Allstate and the California Earthquake Authority or whatever. But the point is, it's insurance. None of us like paying insurance, but what's the alternative? So, if you haven't thought about it in a while, reconsider.
I completely agree with you, Sally. I've had it here. It's like, I should say my father had it here on this building that we own, and I continue to have it because it's just the right thing to have. And Valerie, I know Valerie can speak into it, because a couple of years ago, pre-COVID, one of our guests at her annual earthquake or disaster preparedness fair was Mark Toohey of the California Earthquake Authority.
Mm-hmm.
And he astounded us. And I think, Valerie, correct me if the numbers are wrong, I think really only about 10% of property owners in the state of California actually have earthquake insurance.
Right. It was very, very low. And he
Yes.
also made it very clear about sort of the when and where the money comes in what order, and where they expect you to get your money from. And the stuff that you're going to get from FEMA or the SBA is like last down the list. They expect you to exhaust all kinds of other things first. Plus, by the time you get that, it's a loan often, and you have to pay it back at some point. So I have to say, he's scared. I mean, I think I had it then, but I definitely have it now. And he also talked about the brace and bolt program that you can sign up for. It's earthquake brace and bolt. And I actually signed up for it, and my house qualified, and I got a grant for more than half of what it cost to brace my home for to be totally up to code for earthquake. And on top of that, by getting it braced, I got a discount on earthquake and my homeowner's insurance. So those things are available.
Because your home will not go sliding down into the street, when the earth shakes. And again, Sally brings up a really, really good thing that we don't always talk about. We don't always talk about earthquake insurance. And guess what? I'm down with you. It is expensive. They send me a bill every year, and it's like $850. It's not bad for the year. I'm not complaining. It's just having to shell out. If they told me it was $1, I'd still be complaining, but you kind of get it. But the one thing about insurance, and for anybody who's had to go into the hospital, had a car accident, or whatever it is, we moan and complain about it. But God knows we are so happy when we got it, and when we need to use it, those one or two instances in our lifetime. Because look at hospital bills. They can bankrupt you if you don't have insurance. Car accident, get sued, whatever it is, you don't have that coverage. Same thing with your home. You could be standing in the street looking at your home in ruins. And if you don't have that insurance, you're going to be standing there 2 months later and your home is still in ruins. And you're going to be on the hook to try to figure out how to rebuild. And that's where it gets really dicey. And Valerie, did they say they had about 10? Did they say that overall they had about, was it 10 billion? Or is that way too much money that I'm saying they have?
Well, I don't know. They said that they had a lot of money they felt they were funded to take care of things. Because another thing that people complain about is, oh, well, they're going to be bankrupt and they won't have the money to pay. they say they have plenty of money to pay.
Mhm.
And, you know, and the more people that buy the insurance, the more money they'll have.
Yeah, and it was some outrageous, number that made my eyes glaze over. So
Right.
if you haven't looked into it, really look into it. And guys, we can talk about this at another time, but we can actually get Mark Toohey, as part of our continuing education portion. It's like
Right.
when we
To
stop
talk about
doing,
these things.
yeah, when we stop doing these little sessions of NTP, they're not gone altogether, and we're not gone altogether. We will occasionally bring up different little
Right.
things that might interest you.
And as I mentioned at the beginning, the one that I have in mind to do next is the emotional and psychological preparedness for ourselves and for the people that we're going to be dealing with. So there are a number of different things that we can have speakers come and do. So this is the getting close to the end of our set initial schedule, but we've had these programs going on for years before. From Westside Village. It's one of the things we do. And any subjects that you all want to hear about, let me know, let Chin know, and we will do what we can to arrange for a speaker and to make it happen.
And it's funny because I became acquainted with Mark Toohey from the California Earthquake Authority because one of our communities asked about it, the Village Green over in Baldwin Hills. They approached me out of the blue and said, "Hey, can you help us get somebody from the California Earthquake Authority?" It's not even my side of the street, but it was so intriguing that I said, "Yeah, I'll reach out." And Mark became a very good friend. He he spoke at Valerie's when she came up. She said, "Can you suggest somebody?" And I said, "Yeah, I got somebody." And so feel free, folks, to let us know what you want to hear. Valerie's talk about psychological first aid, that actually came up in one of Patrick's sessions about a week or two ago. And that became a huge discussion point that he and I had, which was really great. So let us know what you want to hear. We'll try to bring it to you. And this has been good, guys. I've had a good time with everybody tonight. And I hope, and it looks like everybody's had a good time. And
yeah. And don't forget to come back next month to learn about, I can't even speak, situational awareness. I have a hard time getting that out. Situational awareness and safety and security for yourself and others and your community after an earthquake.
And I want to pull up Jose Morataya, who I know is hanging out down there. We started out with 15 people and we still got 15 people. I must have had a really good night here. Jose Morataya, are you down there? And I think
I'm here.
I think we have Sergeant Cook for the next section, right?
Yeah, Sergeant Cook. As a matter of fact, I just exchanged emails with him. I wanted to see how he was doing with his presentation. He said he's working on it, and I told him, let us see a preview. He says, when I'm done with it, you'll get it.
So Jose, that will be on September 13th for us here?
Probably, yeah. That's right, because we already provided him the dates for Venice and for this one.
Thank you.
And please note that Westside Village, Palms Westside Village, Mar Vista will be on the 13th of September because the week before is the ever dreaded Labor Day. So everybody will be out having a picnic someplace, or maybe not. So we will be back on the 13th. And it is now 8:31, 20:31 hours in military time. I want to say thank you to everybody who joined us tonight. As I always say, I endeavor to get you guys in and out of here on time. And
Thank you.
And we have a good time. Come on back, reach out to us in the meantime, ask us questions or anything like that. Also sign up for NTP. Jose, can you drop that can you drop our website in there right quick?
Sure.
If you haven't already.
I did already.
It's already there.
Vanna White.
Valerie's quick, man. She already did it.
Vanna White got it going on up in here. I love it. Everybody, have a great night. Be safe. We will see you next time. And
thank you for coming.
Exactly. See you next time, everybody.
Thanks,
Great
everyone.
program. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
It's time for me to get out of my own meeting here.
Take care, Tim. Thank you.
You guys have a good night. I'm gonna stop my share.
Jen, how do I get out of here?
Hey, I'm trying to get out of here myself.
Come on, man. I'm stuck.
Leave.
I'm stuck in my own meeting.
Oh,
Oh,
man.
Twilight Zone.
Oh, man.
There we
Oh.
go.
Help.
Ah, criminy.
Jen, I see you
There
later.
we go. End. I'm hitting the end button.
Okay,
Bye.
bye.
All right.
Thanks,
See you
Jen.
guys
Good job.
soon. And hey, here it's like I know you're listening in the